This is the tamping unit of a 0816 tamping machine. The film shows the assembly of this unit. Burrs are removed from the gear case wherever this is necessary as a result of machining. Spaces which later will contain lubricating oil must be deburred and blast cleaned with particular care. The inside of the bore for the vibration shaft is covered with rubber lac. The fitting areas of the bearing seats must not be covered during this process. The tap holes in the gear case are re-tapped if necessary and cleared of the remaining enamel and chips. The guide columns are mounted in non-ferrous metal sleeves. These sleeves are introduced into the guide column bores by means of an insertion screw. Two sleeves are necessary per column. This means the two guide columns of a tamping unit are mounted in 4 sleeves. The gear case is set on a swiveling assembly stand to make assembly easier. The sleeves are reamed with an adjustable guided reamer. As the reamer is guided in the opposite sleeve, alignment of both sleeves is achieved. The reamer is transferred. Now the finished sleeve serves as a guide for the reamer. The required inside measurement is achieved by adjusting the reamer. Hollow spaces are thoroughly cleaned by blowing off chips. The sleeves are lubricated with oil before mounting the guide columns. A guide column, which is hanging on the mounting crane, is inserted while the gear case is in an upright position. The guide columns are sealed towards the outside with a felt ring which is placed in the guide column cover. The drawing shows the bearing system of the guide columns and the sealing. The circular string ring is inserted. The U-ring is slid onto the guide column with the sealing lip toward the inside and pressed into the fit of the gear case. The cover sealing is put in its place. And the bearing cover plus felt ring are mounted. This cover is screwed to the gear case with 4 hexagonal socket head bolts which are locked with spring washers. The bolts are tightened with a torque of 25 Newton meters. The lower sealing of the guide column on the lower side of the gear case is identical with the sealing at the upper side. It is mounted in the same way. This means each guide column is sealed at the upper and at the lower end. A tamping unit is horizontally supported by 2 guide columns. The assembly of guide columns is finished. The gear case with mounted pick arms. The drawing shows a transverse section of the bearing system of a pick arm. A thin layer of Loctite 601 is applied to the outside of the bearing sleeves. Two sleeves per pick arm bearing are inserted with hydraulic equipment. All bearing sleeves are mounted in this way. Each pair of sleeves is reamed to the required dimensions with a guided adjustable reamer. As the reamer is guided in the opposite pair of sleeves, alignment of the pairs of sleeves is ensured. The required inside measurement is achieved by adjusting the reamer. The reamer is transferred and the opposite pair of bushes is reamed. Now the finished bushes serve as a guide for the reamer. The reaming chips are blown off. Before proceeding with other operations, the area around the pick arm bearing is painted with enamel. The spacer sleeve is inserted. The seat of axial sealing rings is lubricated with oil. Each axial sealing ring is tested and is fitted to the stop with a special tool. A thin layer of Molykote is applied to the spacer sleeve. This lubricant is distributed in the bearing by spinning the spacer sleeve. A thin layer of oil is applied to the fitting area of both thrust washers, which are placed upon the axial sealing rings. The centering sleeve is slid into the bearing. The pick arm, which is hanging on the mounting crane, is carefully opened a bit and brought into position. The thrust washers are pressed together, and the pick arm is slid over the bearing system. The center bolt is slid into the pick arm bearing until the centering sleeve keeps the pick arm at the other side of the bearing. Now the locating fixture is removed and the center bolt is pulled out again. The area of the pick arm around the bearing bore must be heated to between 70 and 80 degrees Celsius. Be careful. Higher temperatures will destroy axial sealing rings. The pick arm bolt is covered with lubricant and driven into the side of the bearing from which the center bolt has been removed. During this process, the centering sleeve is ejected from the bearing. As soon as the pick arm has reached ambient temperature again, the disc washer and the spring washer are placed on the pick arm bolt. The hexagon nut is screwed on, and tightened with a hammering spanner. The pick arm can be detached from the mounting crane. The adapter for pick arm lubrication is twisted in. This adapter is covered with Teflon tape. Make sure that the final position of the adapter is correct. The other three pick arms are mounted in the same way. The assembly of pick arms is finished. Before mounting the vibration shaft and its bearings, it is necessary to make a clear distinction between driving side or outer side and inner side. At the driving side of the vibration shaft, a section of the shaft is longer because of the double bearing. compared to the other part of the shaft with only one bearing. Let us proceed to the pre-assembly of the outer bearing body. The seat of the retaining ring is lubricated with oil. The tested retaining ring is driven in with the sealing lip downwards. The bearing body is marked to avoid confusing inner and outer bearing rings. The sealing surface of the bearing is lubricated with oil. And the paper seal is attached. The inner side of the bearing body is covered with oil. And the outer ring of the pertinent cylindrical roller bearing is driven in with a plastic hammer. Now the outer bearing body is ready to be mounted on the vibration shaft. The seat of the retaining ring in the inner bearing body is covered with oil. The retaining ring is driven in with the sealing lip downwards. The inner bearing body is also marked in order to avoid confusing inner bearing rings. The sealing surface of the bearing body is lubricated with oil. The paper seal is attached. The inside of the bearing body is lubricated with oil. And the pertinent outer ring of the cylindrical roller bearing is driven in. Last, the inner Seeger ring is introduced into the groove of the inner bearing body. Here, the vibration shaft is secured in a holding fixture between the two bearing surfaces. The spacer ring is placed on the inner side of the vibration shaft and fixed by hammering. Then, the inner ring of the roller bearing is brought into position after having been heated to 100 degrees in the oil bath.